You are not your diagnosis. You're not. You're not your back pain. I've had people tell me we start training and they say things like, hey, I have spondyloepididylosis. And they tell me their back's always going to be weak. I've had people tell me that. I've had people come to me with knee pain. They can't do a full squat. The back pain guy, 2 weeks maybe, said his back had maybe 3 weeks, said his back has never felt better after training with me. It felt so strong. A lot of his pain was gone. He even took his brace off, wasn't wearing it nearly as much because he was learning to brace his body correctly. A lot of times what will happen is a doctor will give you a diagnosis. You have a weak back. You have back problems. And you start to believe it. And they always want to be really careful. I get it. They're afraid of saying the wrong things. And what happens in turn is it keeps you weak because you never try. One of the biggest things that'll cause pain in you, one of the biggest things that'll cause problems is not moving. So if you're told you have back pain, if you're told your back's always going to be weak, if you're told anything like that, you're going to not move your back. You're going to not work yourself out correctly. You're not even going to endeavor into anything. And I promise you, that will make that diagnosis true. If you took someone that was healthy and you simply told them, you have back problems, you have some weaknesses in your back, if you do certain lifts, you're likely going to hurt yourself. It could not even be true. But if they believe you, they're not going to work their back out. And all those things are going to become true. They're going to develop pain because they're not going to move enough. They're going to be weak because they didn't move enough. And they're going to have all these problems. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm not saying don't be careful. I'm not saying don't take those things that your doctor tells you into consideration and go, oh, okay, I'm weaker than most people. That just means your technique has to be on point. Their technique has to be better. So the weaker person ends up being the teacher of technique oftentimes because their technique has to be on point. If you're bigger and stronger naturally, it's going to be easy for you. Your technique doesn't have to be perfect. And you can just, whatever the sport is, depends on what it is, but say in football, tackling someone, you're way bigger, it's going to be a lot easier for you. So if a smaller dude that's smaller and weaker gets a tackle on you one day, it's because his technique was really good. So you're not your diagnosis. You should take it into consideration, but you can just think of the symptoms that you maybe have for that day. I have some pain this day. What can we do about it? It doesn't have to be a pill. It could be bracing my back a certain way, recognizing that when I stand like this, when I pull my shoulders back, kind of align everything right, move my head a certain way, my back actually feels a lot better versus if I'm slouched over all the time and then try to bend over and tie my shoes, that tends to bring on pain. Whereas if I braced my back, bent forward, tied my shoes, or kneel down, tie my shoes, that doesn't cause pain. So you can work around these things. And still be very functional. There was I believe it was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu teacher. He was a small guy. He was skinny. He was short. He competed in jiu-jitsu or he started practicing jiu-jitsu at a younger age. He went on, I forget if in jiu-jitsu, it's once you get your 10th degree, if it turns into a red belt, like judo, I think does that, or if it's just a 10th degree black belt, but he was the highest level you can be. He was the teacher one day. Everybody he fought was bigger than him. And he went on to have the most on-point technique you've ever seen. People that grappled him in his older age as a 10th degree black belt would say it was like grappling his jacket. It was like he wasn't even there. He was so elusive. He was so good. And he said at one point that his small stature was a gift. It was a gift. And he believed that it was something that made him always have to try so hard because everybody was bigger and stronger than he was, but it made him the best. It was the only way to continue. If you want to continue down that road, is you have to be better than everybody else if you're smaller and weaker than everybody else. So it can be a good thing. These things that happen to us. I have clients that have shoulder issues. I've had my fair share of shoulder issues. My right shoulder is actually double jointed. I think both of them are, but when I was younger, I used to pop in and out of place, and that sort of caused problems for me later in life, caused some shoulder pain. I probably kind of damaged some things in there. But what that did is it made me have to seek out fixes for that. And now, because of that former issue, I've helped my own shoulder feel better, and I could help other people with their shoulder pain as well, just because I've tried so many different things. I found what works for me. But even if that doesn't work for somebody else, I can still suggest all the other things that were suggested to me at some point in time or something that I've looked up. When we get diagnosed with something, oftentimes we think it's true, right? You kind of mind identify with it. This kind of thing has been studied over and over. If you say to yourself, I'm bad at remembering names, this comes from Jim Quick. He's a memory coach, teaches you how to remember things easier, recall stuff faster, learn quicker, read quicker, all this stuff. You guys probably heard of Jim Quick, cool guy. If you tell yourself, I'm bad at remembering names, which a lot of people say that, especially where I live currently. A lot of people like, hey, what's your name? I'm probably going to forget. Right when they're shaking your hand, they're already kind of saying they're going to forget. And they do, they will. That actually makes it true. Even if someone was good at remembering names, you tell yourself over and over, you say to yourself, I'm bad at remembering names. It actually makes that person become worse over time at remembering names versus if you say, I'm really good at remembering names. It makes you better at remembering names. A lot of research is coming out these days, I feel like, where they're proving that what you say over and over again actually has like a physiological effect on someone. So if you get diagnosed with something then, and you tell everybody, I have this disease, I have this disease, I have this disease, guess what's going to be really bad and really solidified? That disease. And if you say all these symptoms, they come with it, guess who's going to have all those symptoms? Another good story that I saw on a different interview was of a guy who was in high school, I believe, took the ACT, wasn't a good student, was kind of failing a lot, scored really high in the ACT. And it told him, the test told him, you're really smart. So what does a smart person do? A smart person goes to class. So he started going to class like, oh, I guess thought I was kind of dumb, but I guess I'm kind of smart. And now that he learned that he was really smart, started going to class, started getting good grades, got into a great college, got a great job where he got a job, making great money. I think it was 10 years plus later, he got a letter in the mail. Hey, we're really sorry to inform you, you were one of about 15 people that got you didn't score 1,400 or whatever ridiculously high score, you got 700. But because he believed I'm smart, because he believed I'm an intelligent individual and I should go to class and I should do something that intelligent people do, he was very successful. Whereas right before that, he believed he wasn't very smart. So that changes your whole world as far as if it's a physical symptom or if it's a cognitive thing, I'm smart or I'm not smart. Whatever you tell yourself, whatever the story in your head is, which you can change, it dictates a lot about your life. So we have to be careful with that sort of thing and recognize that if we get diagnosed with something that we go, okay, I'll take it into consideration. I'll look up some stuff about it. But today, as far as all the symptoms of this disease, and as far as all these symptoms I'm supposed to have, I only feel this one. And I can probably work around that. It's not that big of a deal. You can get past it that way. You can just live a better life that way, not fully identifying with your disease or what some doctor told you. And oftentimes they end up being wrong anyways. One other thing to mention about this, believing some way is better than other ways kind of goes along with my workout. No one's really endeavored into this type of working out because we all believed working out is supposed to be difficult. We all believed you're supposed to get to near maximal effort when lifting weights to be able to get stronger at all. We all had this belief and it's not necessarily true. Not so far as I found actually, but everyone believed it. You have to work really hard to get results. So that's what they did. And no one's even challenged it for such a long time. And so here I am like, hey, you don't have to work that hard to get good results and you don't, and I'm proving it. And so just because everything's written a certain way, just because everything says something is one way, it doesn't mean that's the only way. Sometimes you challenge it. Sometimes we challenge things, you find out, oh, that's why those rules are in place. Okay, now you kind of learn the hard way. But sometimes you discover something amazing. As long as you're keeping your wits about you, you're not challenging something stupid that you shouldn't be challenging. You're just kind of going, I wonder if this is true, or I wonder why this rule is in place. Sometimes some rules in place for some old conditions. It's kind of a funny example, but let's say you have a very thin rope that people have to walk across and someone writes instructions to getting across this rope from one cliff to the next. And you pick up maybe a stick to balance like those trapeze artists do. You put one foot in front of the other. If someone writes this whole thing out and they don't really describe the bridge and this is just how you get across this and you get it when you get there. Versus years later, someone actually built a bridge, you could just walk across it. But we have these old instructions. And so everyone kind of gets a stick and walks across this well-built bridge, one foot in front of the other as if they're walking across a tightrope or something. Sometimes rules don't apply anymore. Sometimes they were meant for something back in the day. I'm sure we've all experienced this. People say, well, there's a rule about that at your particular place of work. And you go, oh, okay, well, why? You go, I don't know. That's just how we do it. Nobody knows. That happens a lot. Nobody knows why we always take this extra step, why we always check this thing. Sometimes it doesn't apply anymore. Sometimes you realize, well, oh, okay, because the way they used to do it, there was this other thing here, and so that step was important. But now that that's not there, no one just took the time to take that step out, and then, or just reevaluate, why do we have this particular process? So that happens a lot. You can challenge things. You can try to do something different. When I was in track, last thing I'll really say about it, I have two examples. One I don't know is true, but when I was in track, there was my track coach. I remember him distinctly talking about, I forget the guy's name, the athlete. It must have been 2000, the year 2000 or so, 2000, 2001 maybe. No, a little before that. Someone broke the world record for some kind of sprint. And my track coach was teaching all of us, and he said, you all might be surprised to know this, but that man right there, whatever his name was, he runs wrong. That's what he said. He runs wrong. Fastest guy on the planet. And my coach was trying to tell us he does it wrong. Sure. Or maybe he has the best technique. He has advanced the technique. He's the one doing it the most correct. And we're all doing it wrong. Another example, Muhammad Ali was told back in the day, he boxes wrong. Ends up being the biggest, baddest dude out there, knocks everybody out. But people had said when he started, critics of his, whatever, he boxes wrong. You don't have to listen to that stuff. That person just boxes the most right. That's what I'm always interested in myself. I've never really been that interested in doing something the same way that everybody else does it. That's what a lot of people do that, and that's fine. I'd rather advance a technique, not work nearly as hard and beat the pants off everybody anyways. That sounds like more fun. Like Miyamoto Musashi. Everybody out there, one sword, two hands. Musashi was a samurai in the late early 1600s. Everybody had one sword they were holding with two hands. And he one day saw some drummers drumming with two drumsticks, beating the drum. And he was like, holy crap. What if I had one short sword and then one medium to long sword in the other hand, and I could use the short sword to deflect and then get the guy with the other one? One of the greatest samurais to ever live. And one of the biggest things he did was advance the technique. He made it different. You don't have to do everything the same way that everybody else does it. You're definitely not your diagnosis. Take it into consideration. Again, I'm not saying do anything stupid. Okay. Take these things into consideration, but sometimes people, had they just never been told they have some issue, they would have maybe recognized these guys are bigger and stronger than me. So if I want to be in this, my technique better be damn good. And that's all that happens. They never knew they had some back spina bifida spondylosis. Doesn't matter. Their technique was so good, they ended up being one of the greatest teachers out there. So just keep that in mind. Keep working out, do something fun. If you don't love it, you'll quit. So make sure you're enjoying yourself out there, and eat good meals. And above all, just try and stay healthy.